November 2024. But tonight we're going to depart from the RNC, and while it's going on, we want to focus on someone who's been very vocal about Republicans and Democrats. She is Star Parker. She'll be joining us tonight. She's a noted author, columnist, TV host, and the founder of CURE. And then we're also going to be joined by Steve Amerson, a recording artist who has found a way to reach out to members of Congress, both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democrat. He has a unique way of reaching out to them with his Word on the Hill. Let's get started. Which she founded in 1995, and Star serves on the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, California Advisory Committee, and previously served on the U.S. Frederick Douglass Bicentennial Commission. In 2017, Star joined the White House Opportunity Initiative advisory team and has served on the board of directors of the National Religious Broadcasters and the Leadership Institute. And Star is a nationally syndicated columnist and the author of several books, including Uncle Sam's Plantation, How Big Government Enslaves America's Poor and What We Can Do About It. And Star, it's just good to have you on the program. How you doing?
Well, thanks. It's good to be back with you.
Yeah, it's good to look. You've got a lot going on, and certainly there's a lot going on in America right now. Oh, there's such a thing as the presidential election that's coming up, where we see former President of the United States Donald Trump going against the current President of the United States Joe Biden. Both have a message to America, and Americans have a decision to make come November. As you look at politics, something that you studied, and government, something that you studied and worked in for a while, what do you see on the landscape of this election?
Well, I think I see what everyone is seeing, that we have two conflicting views of where we should go in the future for our country. We have one that believes in individualism and freedom and personal responsibility. We have the other side that wants to micromanage every aspect of everyone's lives. So therefore, it's rooted in socialism and a lot of statism, as well as secularism, that anyone can do anything they want anytime they want to do it. When you see someone overselling abortion and why they should kill their offspring, as opposed to the party that's saying, no, maybe we should at least have restrictions. And then those of us like myself who say it's a crime against humanity, we shouldn't be doing it at all. I think most Americans are starting to get comfortable with what the choices are going to be and very uncomfortable that they have to make a decision.
You know, you say it correctly that there are decisions out there and choices to be made. You talked about abortion. You talked about the other aspects of the Biden and Trump way of leading government. There's also the immigration issue. I've been to the Texas border, and I'm sure you have too. And what many people,
No, I haven't.
you know, many American citizens living in Texas, they're saying, hey, do something here because we feel that we're being infiltrated, invaded, and the people that we see coming across the border now illegally mean harm for America and nothing good for America. What do you say about their assessment of what they're living through?
Well, we've seen a lot of the harm, and not just in Texas, all across the country. Broken border is not a new phenomenon. In fact, when President Trump came to town, he decided that maybe we need to do something about that broken border, and he did. And through his efforts, we started seeing decreases in the amount of people that not only snuck into our country, but decreases in crime. He did a criminal justice reform bill that allowed for us to refocus on state laws when it comes to how we treat criminals, what we do in our policing. And then we saw the Biden administration come in and undo and unravel all of those efforts. So now we are being, as many call it, invaded, and it's impacted every place in America, including here in Washington, D.C.
So another subject matter is that when President Joe Biden ran as a candidate, he was talking about his goal was to heal the soul of America. Have we seen any healing in America based on what you've seen taking place in America?
No, that's probably the only thing that President Joe Biden has said that's coherent about the election, that it is about the soul of America. And he's made it very clear what his worldview is about the soul of America. And it's being overwhelmingly rejected, including in the Black community. It's one of the reasons I'm really glad and fascinated that our tome, we have an annual tome that we bring out in opposition to what the Urban League does with their State of Black, America, we bring out the State of Black Progress. And it just happened to just come out right at Juneteenth in an election year where African Americans are overwhelmingly saying maybe we ought to think about other ideas for how we should govern our lives going into the future. We've been believing this political promise of the Democrats for the last 50, 60 years, and we're left wanting. And now we see exactly what their side wants for the country under the leadership of Joe Biden. So we're very happy here at CURE for the timing of this tome to really be able to talk about policy differences in these two worldviews when it comes to how we do our public policy.
And I want to talk to you about that because that is significant. As you know, the black vote, the black electorate is always sought after when it comes election time. Donald Trump is doing something that few Republicans have ever done. He's actually going into the black community, as he did so recently here in New York City, over in the Bronx, and stunned America by going into the Bronx, an area that is predominantly Democrat, and yet overwhelming support was shown that day. That was not something that anyone could foresee. I'm curious to know what you think is going on with regard to Donald Trump taking his message to Black Americans as no Republican has ever done before.
I'm not going to agree that no Republican has ever done it before, but what I will say is that people should not be shocked that Donald Trump is going into the black community. He's very comfortable with African Americans. He's an entertainer. He's from the Hollywood world. He knew Oprah and knows Oprah personally, and Al Sharpton. These are his friends, so he's comfortable in this community.
Why do you think his message is resonating in the black community as opposed to Joe Biden?
Well, everybody knows why Joe Biden's message isn't resonating in the black community. But a couple of things here, Kelly. When we think about that younger black voter, these are the ones that are attracted now to Donald Trump. These are the ones that are actually looking away from Joe Biden. Why is that? Well, one thing is that they're a couple of generations away from the civil rights era. While they appreciate that era, grandmama, maybe great-grandmama was in that era, they're not. They're in the great middle class. 40% of African Americans live in the suburbs. So they experience America. We can call them African American, but they're American. They know the freedom of America. They know that they're in the middle class or even greater than the middle class. They know that we still have pockets of problems, and there are some problems that are more evident than others in certain zip codes, but they've experienced real economic growth, educational growth. So there are those African Americans that are tired of being lied to by the Democrats that are saying, wait a minute, we have to start thinking about our future too. We have to start thinking not collectively, but individually. And I think that that's one of the reasons that there's this openness to hear from the Donald Trump campaign, if you will. They've experienced it. Donald Trump was here and they started seeing their monies grow. There are two things that are underappreciated. When he passed that tax bill, the following year, we saw more African Americans making over $75,000 a year than lived under $25,000 a year. This was historic. It should have been on every front page, but very few people even know about it. When we started getting into criminal justice reform and started dusting through the numbers, we saw for the first time that we actually have more young African Americans in college than in jail. So what's happening is this revolution of the African American who's been forgotten, that grew up in healthy life, perhaps in a single household, but healthy life, and has been making healthy decisions in America. They know that that part of America does work for them, and they wanted to continue working for them because they experienced it under Donald Trump. Under Joe Biden, they've seen exactly the opposite happen. Not only has the economy unraveled, but as you mentioned earlier, the border has been left open.
There's so much to get into. I want to take a break because you have a new book that's coming out. I definitely want to talk about that. I'm talking to Star Parker. She's the president of the Center for Urban Renewal and Education, CURE. And we'll continue our discussion with Star after the break. So many different books. In our first segment, we were breaking down the differences between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Talk to me about where you see these trends leading towards an outcome of this year's presidential election. I know you can't. You don't have a crystal ball in front of you, but things have changed.
Things have changed, but there are places that people want focus, and they're not the three areas that the Biden administration keeps insisting. One, abortion. Oh, the numbers are out. A lot of African Americans know that 20 million were killed at our own hand because of legalized abortion, and we're ashamed. More Black people dead than were alive during the 60s when we had a civil rights movement. It's a crime against humanity. We shouldn't be doing it, and too many comparisons to slavery. So we're hearing now, especially post Roe, in the Dobbs world, now having these discussions in the states, more Blacks are becoming uncomfortable with abortion. Another message that Biden wants to keep insisting is the most important thing that we should be thinking about is on democracy. Well, that is such a subjective term. No one knows what he means. And especially when at the same time he's trying to control every aspect of our lives. And then the third is on January 6th. But he's talking to a group of people who appreciate protests. And in fact, they've experienced protests. During BLM, they saw protests. They were involved in protests that also got out of hand and ended in riot. Black people are not unaccustomed to riot opportunities that have happened in our country. And now we see this J6, and we hear from the left, the progressive left, that this somehow is outside of what has ever happened in America before. So folks know that they're being lied to. On the other hand, you see real issues that need to be addressed: the economy, housing policy, education policy, health policy, economic policy. We can pretend that we don't know anything about what's happened in the collapse of Social Security, but everybody knows it's collapsed, and everyone knows that the economy is collapsed and that inflation is running us out of what we used to call normal 4 or 5 years ago. So it's not rocket science to see that African Americans, like all Americans, are saying, look, I got to get beyond all this race stuff and start thinking about myself and my family and what policies work best for myself and my family.
Star, I'm going to get a little bit deeper into that, but before I get back to that and your new book, I do have to ask you the Israel question and the Ukraine question. We know what's happening with Ukraine. We know that Ukraine is receiving more money, and we know that Israel is now receiving more money from our Congress in order to wage the battles that they're facing. But on college campuses across America, we saw a lot of anti-Israel hate, and we even saw some of these pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas demonstrations go on to say the chants that we would only imagine Iran providing, and that is death to Israel and death to America. Have young Americans forgotten the fact that we had a 9/11 that was conducted by radical Islam? And do they no longer see that the threat that took place and actually was lived out on October 7th, 2023 in Israel can also visit our shores once again?
I think most young people are not thinking about it, and the progressive left doesn't care. And in fact, we're still having discussions. They believe that Israel created 9/11. They're celebrating Hamas. They know they're empowering Hamas with their protests here, and they're loving on it. And that's one of the reasons that now the squad is scared, because the Jewish community in America is not going to tolerate their anti-Semitism. They're pushing back, and they're getting them out of elected offices. So yes, this is very, very important discussion that we have to have as a country. And there are a lot of people that are youthful and that are out there in their streets that weren't even born at 9/11. But no, make no mistake, what that rhetoric is that we're hearing on these college campuses and death to Israel is the same rhetoric we hear through progressive lefts continuously about social justice and their social justice movement. They really believe that their problems are somebody else's fault. They really believe there's an oppressive class, and that those that are being oppressed by that oppressive class need to be put in check, all their money taken from them and annihilated in some cases, like what they're chanting about Israel. Cure is very adamant and strongly in support of Israel. And in fact, we have a stealth campaign we're working on that I can't give too much details for, but we have been very strong in our support of Israel and making sure that we can get the messaging out, and mostly through our Black Clergy Network, that we cannot allow for this discussion to move towards some type of two-state solution. You cannot give a state to someone who wants to kill their next door neighbor. And this is something that I think most Americans are waking up to that reality. But no, too many are not engaged. And it's really a challenge because, as you said, now we're in a couple of wars. After that debacle coming out of Afghanistan, we're seeing two of our friends, if you will, countries that are democracies in war, and we as American people are kind of conflicted on it. But there are some leaders that are not conflicted on it, and that's another thing that will be going into this presidential election. They'll probably talk about it in debates, but definitely in the presidential election, people should think about which party really makes you safer, secure in the principles of our founding.
Yeah. uh, to your subject about the book. What's your latest book, and what are you trying to say to America?
Well, this one actually is a tome. It's not my personal book. It's actually a work of cure. And it's a tome because it's a collection of essays on specific topics, experts in their field. And what we've done is we've countered the aggressive, Urban League with their every annual year putting out their State of Black America, telling the same story from the 60s that the country doesn't work. So what we decided to do was to actually show that the country does work, where we are healthy as Black people, but where we still need to get some work done. So we have essayists from on health issues, on housing issues, on education issues, on economic stability. Steve Moore even talking about personalizing Social Security. The Husak out of AEI talking about the poor side of town and why we need it again, what we've done wrong in housing policy to trap people in certain zip codes, and now their lives are in a mess. Healthcare, we have with Sally Pipes, we have Grace Marie Turner. It is full of real thinkers, Ian West and Leslie Heiner on education policy, where we've gone wrong and how do we fix it. So this is an actual tome, a collection of essays, a project that CURE has started putting out once a year to counter that narrative that keeps pretending that America has not progressed when it comes to African American interests.
Star, I got to get a very pointed question. I want to get into you personally. Who is Star Parker? What did you go through to become the woman you are today?
Oh my goodness, how much time do you have? I've gone through a lot. I'm 68 years old. I have 2 grandchildren. I'm on my way to retirement. I'll be turning the reins of CURE over very soon here, leaving Washington, D.C. and seeing what's available in the next chapter. But how I became on the national scene is because I lived the aggressive lives of the left, ended up on welfare, and then got tapped to do welfare reform or to consult on welfare reform after a Christian conversion, changing my life and doing a business, starting a business. So it's been a journey, like all people's lives, and then they get to the place where they're 68 years old and say, is there anything else that I should do for the Lord before I start going into further sunset years and don't want to get up out of a rocking chair? I'm looking for those opportunities right now. But in the meantime, CURE has done incredible established work here in Washington, D.C. We're very proud of this tome that we have out annually. We also do a policy summit annually with our clergy. This year, our clergy are being surprised to know that we have a surprise for them instead of doing our annual meeting here in Washington, D.C. And we put out an annual report on the state of abortion, the impact of abortion on the Black community. So we've been very successful. We own blackcommunitynews.com, have our own television show. So we've been very successful in the things that I've set up as a result of being tasked by the Lord to take my story of transitioning out of welfare into success, to allow it for others to appreciate and maybe even help them get out of the broken zip codes and the broken lives that they're in right now.
Star, somehow you don't, well, first of all, you don't look 68. And secondly, I don't think I can see you sitting in a rocking chair and just sitting down watching life go by. I think even from a rocking chair.
When I'm 95, I want to do it at 95. I'm going to sit in a rocking chair at 95. Look, if Tom Sowell can leave at 90 and say, I'm going to do photography, then surely at 95, I can sit in a rocking chair.
I will believe it when I see it. My
column has been picked up in a lot of his spots. I'm kind of glad. When he left, I got picked up in the spots that he left when it comes to being syndicated by creators. Then when Dr. Williams passed, and such a dear friend and such an unfortunate for him to pass into eternity, I got picked up in a lot of spots. But where I'm really surprised I'm getting picked up in a lot of spots is I'm not going to remember his name. Oh gosh, Charles Krauthammer. You know Charles Krauthammer. It's
personally
incredible that people are. What a brilliant, bright thinker. And now, my column is running where his column used to run. So, it's humbling for me to stay focused. But you're right. I probably won't stay in a rocking chair too long, but I do like to rock and think.
Rock and think. I like that. And then put it into action. Star, look, you have an intense love for America. So my final question, and you got to come back. We got to have more of these discussions. I'd like to, there's an open door policy here for Star Parker. Anytime you want to come on, just come on. But what is your hope for America?
I hope that this election we really realize, that the majority of Americans realize that we can't go on the way that we are. We can't go on morally. We can't go on in our economic affairs. And so I hope that they see what's really at stake. That we're going to either be biblical and free in our worldview, or we're going to be secular in status in our worldview as a society where our lives are forced to touch. In our individual lives, we have freedom to do what we want, but there are rules that govern those freedoms. And I'm just hoping that we come out of that election on the side of God.
Well said, my friend. Good to always have you on. Thank you for joining us on America's
Thank you so much.
She's Star Parker, president of the Center for Urban Renewal and Education, CURE, which she founded in 1995, and she's still serving America in a very strong, courageous, and bold way. And she does it with love. Sometimes tough love, but that's what you do when you sit back in a rocking chair and crack that whip and say, come on, America, get it together.